Welcome to CivilNet. My guest today here in the studio is Eduardo Lorenzo Ochoa. He is the director of the European Friends of Armenia that is based in Brussels. Eduardo, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
You are here because your organization was taking part in the fourth ordinary session of the Euronest Parliamentary Assembly.
Exactly.
For our viewers who might not have a clear understanding of what Euronest is and does and what its objective is, could you very briefly, if you could, explain to us what its role is today?
Sure. I mean, Euronest was an idea originated in the European Parliament back in 2006. It took a few years to put it into practice. In the meantime, as you know, in 2009, the Eastern Partnership was launched by the European Union with the Eastern Partner countries. And therefore, today, Euronest provides the democratic legitimacy to the Eastern Partnership Initiative, and it's the parliamentary forum that monitors the Eastern Partnership,
and
in a few words.
Right. The countries of the Eastern Partnership, correct me if I'm wrong, Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan.
That's right.
And this is the second time that you're on...
And by the way, and Belarus.
And Belarus.
Although they are temporarily suspended,
because they
given that the European Parliament does not recognize the Belarusian Parliament as a fully democratic parliament.
I see. And this is the second time that Euronest is holding its meetings in Armenia. And this particular session was interesting on several levels. First of all, because Armenia in September 2013 decided to back away from the association agreement, the EU association agreement that it had been negotiating for many years, and instead decided to join at the time the Russian-led customs union, which has now transformed into the Eurasian Economic Union with Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan. This morning I was listening to Johannes Hahn speaking. He is the European Commissioner for Integration and Enlargement, and he was saying that Europe continues to want to deepen and strengthen relations with Armenia. Are these just simply words, or do you think that they will move into action? And on the other hand, will the Armenian government reciprocate any kind of initiative by Europe?
Yeah, well, this is a very extensive question. I think it's not just word, there is action. And I can give you some examples. Since that date that you mentioned, Armenia has been granted access to European Union agencies and programs, and is actually already making use of that. As you may know, Armenia has joined the program Horizon 2020, which is, let's say, in terms of finance, the biggest European Union program, and also some agencies. On top of it, has moved forward with the mobility agenda. And now, also what I think the Commissioner was explaining today, that both sides need time to define and identify the areas where they want to work together, where they want to cooperate. I'd like to underline also that European Union is not about paternalism, it's about partnership. So it's up to both sides to decide where you want to work. And regarding the situation with customs union, I think that despite this fact and Armenian international commitments, there's room for deep cooperation. And I can give you one example. I'm sure you know Mercosur Customs Union. Well, exactly. One of the founding members of Mercosur Customs Union, which is Brazil, has a deep relation with the European Union in terms of democracy, environment, justice cooperation, etc. But even in trade, being the European Union the first trade partner of Brazil, despite the fact that Brazil belongs to Mercosur Customs Union. In the case of Uruguay, the second trade partner is the European Union too. So there are ways and means to strengthen and further that cooperation.
It depends on the willingness of the partners as to how much they want to.
And the capacity.
Right, absolutely. These meetings were also interesting because one of the resolutions adopted during the session had to do with the Armenian Genocide. Talk to me about that. I mean, it is 2015, the centenary of the Armenian Genocide, and now there seems to be a lot of action taking place in different cities and parliaments around the world. What did this mean, and what was your involvement in that?
Well, as you know, we are a Brussels-based organization, so we supported the Armenian delegation in managing to table the resolution. I mean, it's regarding the procedures of Euronest, you need to count with the number of signatures in order to be able to table it from both components, European Parliament component and Eastern Partnership component. So actually, together with our friends from the Armenian Federation, we gather the signatures. So that was the necessary condition, but not the sufficient condition to make this pass. And then, I mean, we've been advocating for this and basically raising awareness and explaining the importance of recognizing and the genocide. I think the Europeans understood it quite easily. For the Eastern Partner countries, it was a bit more difficult, but in the end, the resolution was adopted.
Tell me, how did the voting go? I mean, Azerbaijan wasn't participating.
Which is a pity, but
sure,
a choice.
Because I believe the Armenian delegation did participate in the Euronest session in Baku.
I went to Baku with them.
Right. So how did the voting go with the other Eastern Partnership countries for the genocide?
In the end, they also understood that it was even counterproductive for themselves to oppose to such an evident issue. And I think there were 8 votes against or 7 votes against, which is not very significant.
I just want to return again, if I may, to Euronest and its impact. Is it a body that really can impact, or is it just part of, there are so many different organizations and administrative sort of structure within Europe. This seems to be yet another body. Does it have impact? Can it have impact? Well, how important is it for the region?
I think it's very important because apart from the reports that produces, it fosters what we call parliamentary diplomacy that I think is important, especially with the European Parliament, but also with the Eastern Partner countries. On the other hand, obviously, in the Riga summit, I mean, these reports are meant for the heads of the state participating in the Riga summit and representatives of the government to take note of them and act accordingly.
Which is coming up in May, I believe.
Exactly.
Right.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, it's not legally binding, but it's a very strong political signal.
Sure, quite understandable. Let's talk about the European Friends of Armenia, a Brussels-based organization. The director is not Armenian, obviously. Talk to me about the roots of the organization, because I think several years back there was a little bit of it wasn't clear what the mission of the organization is, and yet recently we've seen you doing a lot of advocacy work, lobbying, working with other Armenian organizations. So what has been the evolution of European Friends of Armenia?
Well, I've been director only for the last year and some months, but I mean, of course, I've always been in the past also in touch with them. I think European Friends of Armenia was established as a logical consequence of Armenians having friends in the European institutions, and members of the European institutions having friends in Armenia, but not having
a bridge
or a platform to articulate their wishes and their demands. So this is a bit the gap that at the origin the European Friends of Armenia tried to cover, to put them in touch and be the oil that makes the engine turn. So
where do you get your funding? Because look, it's interesting. The biggest issue that we find is that Armenian diplomatic missions, embassies, should be doing a lot of work, especially in power centers in the world, whether that's in Washington or Moscow or in Brussels. And yet oftentimes it's the Armenian lobby groups that pick up the slack, where the embassies can't seem to be the oil in the engine that makes it work.
But it's also normal, For instance, we've done also a lot of quite a bit of advocacy in terms of fostering the integration of Armenian political parties in the respective political families, and this is something that, for instance, diplomats cannot step in.
Sure. So but whether it's promoting the interests of the Armenian people or the interests of the Armenian state, whether it's genocide recognition or the recognition of Nagorno-Karabakh, they certainly can do that work, no?
Well, and they do indeed.
So do you cooperate with the embassies?
Yeah, also, yeah.
Right, and again, you said with the European Association.
Armenian Federation.
Right, European Armenian Federation. That has a very long name. It's hard to remember. So who created you? Who are your funders, and how did you need support?
Like actually, a vast majority of Brussels-based NGOs, we are financed by private donors that don't interfere in our work, but they don't want to be in the light. They prefer keeping their anonymous status, and actually in our charter, these are private donors, nothing to do with politics and nothing to do with governments or political parties.
I see. And just a final question. Is the Armenian presence today in Europe sufficient? Are we doing what we should be doing, or are we just getting by?
It's never enough, you know. But I think if we look back, Armenian presence has strongly increased in the European Union. But there's still room for increasing this presence, and this is also something that we try to work on.
Right. Not an easy task, I'm sure.
Not an easy task, true.
Especially when you're dealing with Turkey and Azerbaijan, who have many more resources. And
I can tell you one piece of information. As you know, in Brussels there are 3 Armenian NGOs. The AUB, you know, the HBU, the Armenian Federation, and the European Friends of Armenia. You know how many Azeri NGOs are based?
Tell me.
14.
Yeah.
And not with 3 or 4 people like us.
Right. Much bigger staff, yeah. So a lot of work cut out for everybody.
Yeah, a lot of intoxication. This is, if you want, the nastier part of our work as European Friends of Armenia, the time and resources we need to spend in telling the people the truth vis-a-vis the intoxication that Azerbaijan often tries to pass through.
Well, best of luck, and
thank you very much.
Thank you for being our guest.
My pleasure.
We'll be following the work that you're doing in Brussels.
And you are welcome also to come. Huh?
Surely, one day.
And I think also soon, it's not a secret because it's in the agenda of the European Parliament, the 15th of April, there are no changes. The European Parliament, hopefully, will adopt a resolution on the centennial of the Armenian Genocide.
Well, we'll be looking forward to that. Thank you very much.
No problem.
I'd like to remind our viewers that my guest was the director of the European Friends of Armenia, Eduardo Lorenzo Ochoa. Stay with CivilNet.